Okay, so, last time, on Gran Turismo 4, we did Like the Wind, and where, after I had to spend nearly 100 grand just to make it so my Toyota 7 would actually win at test course, we have now begun the extreme events, and I tried seeing if I could actually get through to the premium sports lounge, but for some very apparent reason, concept cars are accounted for as modified cars. So I tried seeing if I could use either the W12 or my Ford GT concept to enter the premium sports lounge, and well, ultimately both of these choices were quickly rebuffed. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to do this my way, and that means I am going to buy myself a new car. So, and this of course is purely a me choice because, well, this is one of the most straightforward choices I can make. And that's why I'm choosing this, the Ford GT. And because all of these come with their own set of colours with stripes, just because there was once a Le Mans winner called the Ford Mark IV, I might as well use this one. Also because, well, I've always fallen for the red with white stripes, so that's what I'm using as my car for this next event. And I don't really think we need to make any changes on it. This is basically a supercar after all, so I think we've more or less got everything we need. I'm convinced in saying we won't really need any tuning, except maybe a set of the Sport slick tyres, which I think is probably the only thing that's really needed from this thing. From this 550 horsepowered V8 motor. And if it's possible, hopefully this motor will manage to fire on all cylinders. But anyway, let's get through to the extreme events, which again has a fairly restrictive number of cars that you can actually use, but in this case it's understandable because, well, we're not actually going against modified cars per se. And in terms of the car selections, we can either use a Mercedes, an Aston Martin, a Ford GT, which is one of the self-explanatory options. Also got the BMW M3, and also the Lotus Esprit V8, along with a couple of others. So we are doing 4 laps of Monaco, 5 laps of Opera Paris, 5 laps in Hong Kong, 4 laps at High Speed Ring, and 3 laps around New York reverse. So I think this should be easy, we shouldn't have too many problems here. And now, let's get ourselves moving. And we are starting this off by going against 2 Mercedes, 1 Shazata, 1 Pagani, and 1 Aston Martin. I'm convinced in saying we won't really need the sports slicks for this one, but I've got them fitted anyway, for just in case. And since we're not driving rally cars anymore, we don't need any real driver assists, except maybe traction control. But I think everything else, we should be okay with this. The problems we might have had in the rally events, I don't think they're going to show up here for this one. I believe we should be okay. From what I can see. So, let's go. And to open this up, we'll only be scoring 8 points. So, that tells me these races are probably going to be very easy. I could have used the Lotus Esprit if I really wanted to, but since I've already used an Esprit, I figured for this, well, this is kind of a personal choice. But I am still convinced in saying this will be pretty easy. From what I can see. So there's not really any needs right now to push the car to where the rev limiter will be per se. And already the SLR McLaren is out to an early lead, but it's only 4.5 seconds. And contact was kind of expected there as we got off of Mirabeau. But that's okay, because, well, I managed to clear them with relative ease. Plus, since I am using one of what's probably the best choices for this event, because, well, this car is technically supercharged, I have immediately taken the lead. Which, in all honesty, is not too surprising. And now, my only real option from here is basically to, well, just pull away and pretty much go on a tear. Especially since that's ironically what supercars like this one are made to do. Although one thing that did actually surprise me is knowing that the Ford GT actually did not make any appearances in the friggin' Supercar Festival when it was actually one of the cars displayed on the event thumbnail. Which, in all honesty, that did surprise me. Knowing that the car literally named and produced after the GT40, which, yes, to confirm the non-biased people, the Ford GT was technically British made, but I do believe, of course, that under the circumstances there was plenty done from both sides when it came to producing the GT40. And I think it's only natural that a car like this would obviously be the successor to the greatness of the GT40. Plus, this car did actually appear in a number of FIA sanctioned events in, I think, what was used to be called the GT1 class, although I don't know what precisely they call it these days, but either way, this car did prove to be quite the GT racer. I couldn't tell you how many races it won as a race car, but in terms of the GT touring car category, it was definitely effective, to say the least. And that's ironically what this car is proving here now, because, well, this car is technically supercharged. Compared, of course, to the other models that are, well, natural aspiration. So, not too surprising to say that we're competing at what's more or less, well, I guess you could say, city venues for most of this, with the exception of High Speed Ring. But altogether, I think it's fine. Because, well, I am basically just edging away and not really having to put my shifts into the red zone because, well, in all honesty, there's no need for me to, as I get a little bit loose there on the exit of that pool section bus stop. I think I can understand why these races are short. Plus, I think it's fair to say that with these supercars not really having any upgrades fitted on them, well, most of them being supercars, it's fair to say the difficulty of this event is not really showing itself at this time. Because both myself and the SLR at this stage are very much, well, we're just basically stretching our legs at this point. Because we definitely seem to be pulling away at probably an interval that feels about as long as the neck of a giraffe. Because that's just how far ahead we are of just about everyone else. As we now head through to back once again, and now heading through the swimming pool section. This section of the course actually used to be a straight line, and the only thing you really had aside from that straight line was basically just a sharp hairpin where you basically just had to turn right and then you were basically just, well, on the front stretch again. But anyway, easy first win. No real competition in this one. Kind of the sort of thing I was expecting. But then again, I chose the Ford GT because, well, I wanted to. Oh, and the SLR did manage to finish 14.6 seconds behind me. But either way, it didn't stop me from just continually pulling away. So, yeah. Do I have any recent replays saved at Monaco? I figure it might as well be worth a look, just whilst I'm here. I want to check and see if there were any recent ones. I'm not really bothered. I'm not really bothered about saving this replay at Monaco yet. I think I should be okay. Anyway, on to race 2. And this time, we have got a Mercedes SLR with a Giuseppe, another Mercedes, the CL600, and a Pagani Zonda, along with another Ford GT. Yeah, I think this will probably be pretty easy still, except for saying that we'll have the Ford GT in the field, so I think that's the main reason why this might be more interesting, because we have that instead of the Mercedes we had before. There was the clear back marker. And the CL600 looks like he's probably going to be the field filler for this one, as I immediately clear the Ford GT and tried to get up the inside of the Giuseppe. I managed to clear him in relatively little time, and now clearing the Pagani pretty quickly as well. He's trying to do the switchback, but it's not going to work. I clearly have the faster car in that instance. And it looks as though it's going to be another case of me and the SLR McLaren at the front of the field. And as I would have expected, the other Ford GT has now cleared the Shizata, and I go into the wall. That's definitely a corner I need to brake for in this car, and oversteer. That was a perfect rotation. Just a perfect 360 rotation once I got on that bump. I actually managed to just perform a beautiful pirouette without actually touching anything. Honestly, that was a beautiful spin. I don't care what anyone says, that spin was beautiful. And the other reason I say that is, well, because I did not touch anything. So you can probably understand the real beauty of it. But anyway, Opera Paris, a bit of a tighter circuit layout than what Monaco has. So I think it's fair to say that's partly the reason why I haven't taken the lead yet. But nonetheless, once I do manage to clear the SLR, this'll definitely be another easy win for me, from what I can see. And got a brake for this corner. I know these races are not going to be really that hard for me to win. And that was the bump that caught me out before. But either way, I have now cleared the SLR as we head through this last sequence of corners once again. And it looks as though we are very much going to chip away from the SLR from this stage forwards, is what me thinks. Because, well, since this is a competition for unmodified cars, it's fair to say that we're doing alright for ourselves. Also, yes, I did put on the Sport Hard tyres because, well, I was at least wanting it to be more of a challenge than what it actually would be, had I not opted to put on the Sport Hard tyres. And on the brakes, gotta step on the brakes through that left-hander. And now going over that awkwardly positioned bump again. Fair to say, of course, that we're very much in supercar country with these city courses that we have. And it's understandable because, well, with premium supercars like these, well, most of them anyway, we are very much on our way to putting together what should be the easiest run of races we'll have in probably this entire series. But either way, I figured this was a car that did not need any modifications in order to win. It might be oversteery at times, but at other times, we're doing alright for ourselves. And it looks as though You can clearly tell where the haves and have-nots are positioned, because, well, the top 4, they're clearly pulling away from the bottom 2, and that also includes me as well. But again, I always knew Opera Paris was going to be a difficult one. That's definitely a first gear corner for this car. Don't really need to push too hard to stay on top from what I can see. Final lap. And not really pulling away as much as I was at Monaco. And maybe that's because the road surface is bumpier, but either way, I'm still coping with it okay because, well, I'm managing to stay out of the walls. I think the other Ford GT is still in P4 from what I can see. Because then again, Opera Paris isn't really a course that requires speed above acceleration. It's actually acceleration that is more required above speed because, well, this course, it does have its fair share of slow speed corners where acceleration is more important than speed. As I now have a 6-second gap over the SLR, and I highly doubt that's going to change. And through these tight corners for the last time once again, and slowly working our way through, and there we go, 2 wins on the trot in my Ford GT. Huh, what do you know? I was right. The GT did wind up finishing 4th. And, well, at least we can say we get more people finishing at the line. These races aren't too long, in my opinion. I'd say they're more or less where they need to be. But anyway, there we go. 2 races down, and now let's head to Hong Kong. Something else that should be noted is the TVR Tuscan that you see in the thumbnail for this event. I don't really know if the TVR is eligible to enter this event. But that's okay, because, well, there will actually be an event later on in the game where we will have to use the Tuscan. But anyway, let's go with this race of mostly Mercedes with a Pagani, with mostly, well, 2 Mercedes, 1 Aston Martin, and 2 Paganis. Certainly another race like the other 2, which I reckon will be relatively easy for me to pull off. And as ever, I'm not really interested in making any modifications because, well, I know the Ford GT is easily one of the best cars I can use. Plus, you know, it's the Ford GT. It quite literally is my favourite car if you have seen my video outros. That's a note, by the way. And it looks as though the challenges I will have in this event will be nowhere near the levels that the SLR gave to me in the first 2 races, as I wind up hitting both sides of the wall there. However, because the I think that's the R265 if I'm not mistaken. It's one of the AMG models for sure. I'm strongly convinced in saying he's going to give me nowhere near as much of a challenge as what the SLR McLaren was giving me. And that wasn't really much. Yeah, I already have a 5.2 second lead. It's obvious to say that this win is going to be a pretty easy one, for all intents and purposes. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Even though I'm not having a good time of trying to get adjusted to this Hong Kong course overall. Yeah, I still a little time there, but I doubt it's really going to be as much time lost as what some people might think it is. Plus, you know, with cars as wide as these, you never would expect them to be racing on city courses in real life. Because, well, actual city roads, or a lot of them at least, they're typically narrow. And I think what the purpose of this event is to basically show that racing on mostly city courses for this event, it shows, of course, what you're able to do in a simulator, the things that you, well, obviously cannot do in real life. But, nonetheless, as long as we at least have it in a simulator where we can actually race on these uniquely designed city courses, then altogether, I'm pretty content with that. This, by the way, is a first gear corner. A very sharp hairpin, I might add, as well. And it looks as though the haves and the have-nots definitely look to be showing their superiority over everyone else. And that, ironically, is what we are doing now. So, 13 seconds is now the margin, and it looks as though we have pretty much given ourselves another win to most likely chip away with. Unless I wind up making a string of mistakes that ultimately causes me to stall my car. But at this stage, I doubt that's even going to be possible. Well, the one thing I haven't done for a while is actually save a replay here at Hong Kong. I don't think I've actually done that since, what, episode 30? Wait, hold on. Let me backtrack a bit. Actually, yeah, I think it was episode 30 the last time I saved a replay here at Hong Kong. Or whatever episode it was that, well, I saved the frickin' Boxer Spirit episode. I think that was episode 30. So I might actually consider saving my replay here in Hong Kong. That does seem like the ideal choice for me. But either way, we go and continue our ever-increasing domination. Because that is what we do. as I now have a 21 second lead over the... I think that's the SL600 I'm leading, if I recall correctly. It's either that or it's the SL65, which I'm leading. But yeah, to put it simply, this race is very much an exclamation point. Because of just how consistently dominant I have been now for these first 3 events. Yep, no one is making it to the line. But anyway, another 8 points are mine, and hey, I was right. It is the SL65, the AMG. And yep, it's obvious to say this event knows where the haves and have-nots are positioned. Although I did actually have an interesting race when I sweeped up that GT World Championship race at Hong Kong, where I did remember to pit that time. And believe it or not, it actually came down to a last lap pass, which did actually make it more intriguing, knowing that the race itself altogether in Hong Kong, when I did that sweep-up race with my Nissan R89, it actually proved to be a pretty good race altogether. I was honestly amazed at how good the race itself actually was. It definitely had plenty of comers and goers, and I would say there was enough evidence to be convinced in saying that it was a good race, and that, under the circumstances, it took me a battle up to the last lap to actually beat the R92 CP at the line. And it also came down to a last lap pass as well, although mainly that was because I was on fresher tyres, but either way, piss easy win. Let's try and see if we can get more challenges at High Speed Ring. And we now have just 2 races left, and I think this one just became the easiest of the bunch, as we have no SLR McLaren, but what we do have are the CL600, the Shelby Series 1, the Aston Martin DB7, the Aston DB9, and the Spiker C8. This is going to be pretty easy. Yeah, just as I thought. We'll only get 5 points if we win, so... yeah, this is definitely gonna certify itself as the easiest of the bunch, and yep, I'm getting bullied. And I spin off the line. Although, to be fair, I was caught up in the pack. And, well, to be perfectly honest, once I do manage to take the lead in this one, it's pretty much going to be a domination streak, because I definitely have what is almost certainly the quickest car here. Fortunately, however, my domination will be short-lived, because this race is only 4 laps long. Which means it should be an easy enough task for me to come away with probably some very easy points. And the Spiker is being held up by the Shelby as I get into the wall, Really trying my best not to hit the wall again. Shelby's actually doing a pretty good job of holding off the spiker at the moment. Although the spiker will inevitably get past him. As a matter of fact, I think he's past him now. Okay. And through this banked right-hander because we're on the reverse course. And you know, they did actually bring back high-speed ring in GT7. I'd say the course isn't quite as good as it used to be, but I'd still say high-speed ring looks pretty impressive. Altogether, at least if you're wanting my personal preference over what I think about the modern high-speed ring. And yep, I get loose again. Well, had to happen sooner or later, where there was going to be one race that I would actually struggle to keep my car on circuit. I think it's fair to say this race has definitely proven that so far. But as I would have expected, the Spiker C8 does now have possession of P2, and it looks like he'll probably be my nearest challenger, from what I can see. I think if the SLR McLaren was in this race, or the other Ford GT that was at Opera Paris, I have no question in saying that this race to me would have definitely been more interesting, but at this time at least, it's looking more and more like this is going to be another dominant win for me. Because that is just how superior the Ford GT is in comparison to most of its competition. Or at least with me behind the wheel of the GT, if you follow me. But either way, showcasing my dominance again, as this time I enter turn 1 at 190, get it down to about less than 100 as I get through the right-hander, and yep, unless I have another spin in the end, I doubt anyone else is making it to the line. Because that is just how much more superior my straight line speed is in comparison to everyone else. So it's fair to say the Ford GT has struck again at High Speed Ring. A race that I was practically guaranteed to win, even if it wasn't for my 2 spins. This was always the sort of dominant performance I was anticipating here. And not quite a new best lap time, but either way, I don't really care, because we got the easiest of these 5 races out of the way. Although pretty much all of these races up to this point have actually been pretty easy. But again, domination is just a part of racing. Some people know how to do it consistently and others don't. It depends on knowing if you prefer to come up with a compromise like I do. Anyway, let's head to Manhattan. And so for our final race of the Premium Sports Lounge, we have got 3 Mercedes, 1 Aston Martin Vanquish, and a Callaway C12. So, to all intents and purposes, this should be an easy win, from what I can see. But, let's go. So, 6 points if we can win this last race. I would consider it to be very likely, if not certain, that this race is probably going to be an easy win. Especially because, well, as you might have guessed, New York does have long straightaways. Which means this should pretty much be a walk in the park for the GT from what I can see. As in, to me, this one is going to go unchallenged. As I now cleared the Aston Martin Vanquish, and I'm now approaching the Callaway. As we head through these sharp right-handers and past the, I think that's the Plaza Hotel, if I recall correctly. But either way, I think we're now heading through East Avenue as we get through these right-handers. The Callaway is kind of a modified muscle car to all intents and purposes. I wouldn't really consider it to be a supercar by most lengths of the imagination, but either way, I have now taken the lead as we are heading down Broadway and back up Times Square. And completing the first lap, a 154.3, and stepping on the brakes at 169, nice, as we head through Columbus Circle for the second time. One thing that does actually surprise me about the New York course in this game, it's knowing about how blatantly obvious it is that other racing game developers at the time had actually copied the New York course and then reused it in other games, but just with a few extra steps in their course layouts. It's honestly a pity to say that they didn't get the New York course back again. Because I think if they would have kept the New York City course as it was when they first captured it in, I think it was 2003 when they first captured the New York course when developing this game, I definitely feel like this course would have certainly gone on to have a few different iterations. As we now head back up Times Square once again, it very much looks like this is going to be pretty much a blowout win. As in, probably a blowout win similar to how, well, I guess we're wanting a cross-reference here. Similar to how the New York Giants soundly defeated the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 21. I figured I'd make that reference just because, well, it was clearly a blowout win. Plus it was also the first of, believe it or not, an eventual 5 Super Bowls that John Elway would officially make it to. And since the Denver Broncos had ironically reached the Super Bowl 4 times before they actually won it, because they were also beaten by the Cowboys one year, the Denver Broncos eventually did manage to, well, I guess you could say, exorcise their demons to where they would convincingly defeat Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers, and that was in Super Bowl 32. And to add to that, of course, they then won the following Super Bowl. Anyways, just like that, I win. But yeah, the New York Giants, during Super Bowl 21, I think they were led by Phil Simms, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they soundly defeated the Denver Broncos that year at the end of their 1986 championship run. The Giants basically were the team to beat that year. Anyways, another 60 grand is ours. And the SL65, as I would have expected, takes home P2. The Callaway is P3, then we had the Vanquish P4, and at the back we had the 2 SL600s. Pretty easy win if you ask me. Anyway, let's move on to the prize car. And what do we get? What a surprise. We get another Ford GT. I am really not surprised. And we get it in white. You know what? It's fine. It's a nice addition to have, even though it's not really the one I would have expected. But that's just me. Anyway, so pretty easy event altogether if you use the Ford GT. I'd imagine it'll be something similar with if you probably use the M3 GTR, but I don't think that car can be purchased. It's the road car I'm referring to now, not the race car. But there we go. 2 extreme events are now down. And before we do our next event, I may need to do some grinding. However, let's now check our stats, as we are now 49.5% complete. So, during the middle of my next event, I will soundly reach 50% completion. But anyway, in those last 3 races, well, they were mainly just blowout wins. Because, well, I figured they were going to be easy ones anyway. But this is what we get. In Centennial White Clear Coat, or just Centennial White I should say, we get another Ford GT. And this is quite literally as white as a ghost. But there we go. Okay, so the Premium Sports Lounge is now done, and next time we'll be doing the Real Circuit Tour. Sorry, or the World Circuit Tour I should say. Anyway, yeah, that's what we're doing next. But before then, let's do some grinding, because I want to buy my next car for this next event. So that's what we're doing next. Anyways, yeah. World Circuit Tour is our next event. Stay tuned.